So the flip side of social media, how disinformation propaganda is spread and how the media should fight it. So we shall speak about it with the leading Ukrainian experts and very famous foreign experts. The studies of Thomson Reuters and Internews networks testify that Ukrainians, they preliminary take information from the social media. At the same time, the academic community is complaining that it's very difficult to evaluate how information is spread in social media, which impact it has, and how and what it looks like. Yesterday, my colleague showed me an ad with a fake on coronavirus, and this ad was easily spread in Facebook and social media, and no algorithm could trace it, because right now the manipulators, the disinformators, they found the ways to circumvent all these, political signs of political ad and so on. And if the person who spreads information has the so-called natural behavior, then it's a lot easier for him to order such ad, to pay for it. It costs very cheap, and just to disseminate it, and it will be very difficult for us to trace it. How currently, for today, disinformation looks like in social media, and what are the challenges in front of the researchers? I would like to ask our first speaker, who is Dmitro Teperik, who is the ICDS Chief Executive, Program Director, Resilient Ukraine, which is in Estonia. Dmitro, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Good day. Tell us, please, how the disinformation picture look like today, and with the also surveys of disinformation, can we assess the impact of disinformation? Can we describe what it looks like? Thank you for your invitation. Я перейду тепер на англійську мову. Це дійсно є виклик. І це виклик не лише для звичайних клієнтів, але також це є викликом і для дослідників, для аналітиків. Отож, доступ до таких так званих великих даних, big data, він є дуже обмеженим. Я пам'ятаю ті часи, коли ми починали аналізувати різні такі публічні дискусії, а також акаунти у соцмережах на Балканах, а також в Україні. Особливо якісь публічні обговорення та акаунти користувачів на Фейсбуці, але також ВКонтакті, це російська соціальна мережа, а також Окей, Однокласники, але ми потім перейшли до Інстаграму та Ютубу. В той час, як це було зроблено 4-5...
The data is much more limited. Well, again, for our consumers, we can send a signal that any publicly available information on social media can be manipulated. So social media environment is not safe. It's not a safe information source. So therefore, any information, if it's even look trustworthy, cannot be verified quickly on social media. So therefore, our advice for media consumers is very simple. So do not trust the information found on social media. And in that regard, I think the role of so-called classical media and the role of newsrooms and the role of journalists, I think, has a paramount importance for explaining the complex context of different crises and different problems our societies are facing. And this is the problem we cannot solve just technologically. So if we look at the situation in technological race, well, human abilities will always lose that kind of race. So therefore, this challenge can be solved either politically or with some very strict regulations imposed by the governments on big tech companies. That would be a short or midterm solution to regulate social media market and to oblige big tech companies to provide big data to researchers and analysts. For a long-term solution, it seems to me that we should apply so-called demand and supply approach, which means that it's our duty of researchers, also duty of journalists and educators to train young generations and to train next generations for demanding more qualitative media, more qualitative content, and demanding actually the control of information sources. So in that regard, labeling social media as unsafe environment for information consumptions, it's also our task to provide quality information through other media channels and media sources. And therefore, I think everything which is related to media literacy, information literacy, and communication literacy will be actually in high demand for knowledge and skills for future generation. But this is again a very long-term solution and adaptation of education and training curricula is needed. Just to repeat myself that for a short-term solution, we are not able to solve it technologically. So algorithm will be and are actually so much smarter than we, much quicker, much more adaptive. So the only way to regulate it is again a political decision, which means we should raise the awareness of our decision makers and policy shapers that big data from the social media is not accessible. Well, again, we have to understand that disinformation spread in social media, it's not a new phenomenon anymore. Well, politicians might be even aware that many social media channels basically are full of different kind of disinformation. But the problem is that some politicians actually might benefit from that. So they are also using social media instruments in their political communication. They are also using social media instruments for manipulating of public opinion of their electorate. And that makes this game even more difficult, because the politicians should be actually responsible for regulating the interactions with the big techs, but then they have this conflict of interest because as many studies showed that social media is being used irresponsibly by many politicians in different countries for manipulating of public opinion. So not just spreading disinformation, but also giving them some electoral preferences. And this is again, I think, the task of civil society, and together with the media community and experts from different fields to raise public awareness that it is unfortunately not a technological challenge. It has become a political challenge to be solved by policymakers and decision makers, and together, of course, with researchers and civil society. Thank
Дякую,
you.
Дмитро. Дякую. Дуже цікаво. І насправді з початку
Dmitro, thank you so much for such an interesting presentation. Our research has shown a spike in Russian disinformation in traditional media. Then there was a decrease at the beginning of this summer. And starting from August this year, there was an increase in Russian disinformation, especially in relation to coronavirus, to vaccination, especially in regional media, especially those which work in the east of Ukraine and in the south of Ukraine. I'm interested how it is correlated with European research, because if they also follow that Russian propaganda related to vaccination, coronavirus, then we need to make this decision probably at the level of several countries. It shall be a joint decision rather than making a decision in each and every country. This is a threat to public security. So we are now joined by Adam Sybera, Kremlin Watch analyst, European Value Center for Security Policy from the Czech Republic. Adam, can you please tell us whether you see in the Czech Republic a spike in Russian disinformation which is related to coronavirus? Can you follow this in social media? I'm not talking about traditional media. In traditional media, we somehow try to follow this disinformation. But what happens in social media? Can you please evaluate what is happening there? Thank you.
I'm very grateful to be here. It's a wonderful forum. So in regards to coronavirus in Czech Republic, I would start off that following the Russian narrative or the Russian disinformation narrative, one must appreciate that we have a very common history with Slovakia, and within the last 2 years, or since the start of the COVID epidemic, you can notice the narratives vary between the two countries, and the only reason why they're different is because Slovakia has accepted Sputnik 5 as the vaccine, as an official vaccine, or Igor Matovich's government. I would say more. Correct myself, because I don't think there's also a good part of the population and the government that goes against this hybrid tool. But you can see that since Slovakia has accepted the Sputnik 5 vaccine, the disinformation narrative takes a spin and is actually explain how important it is to get vaccinated, because then the society picks up on the narrative and is essentially inclined to go with the Russian strategy. Whilst in Czech Republic, due to various reasons, the Sputnik 5 didn't get the license, and you can immediately follow the social media groups changing and taking a spin within the narrative, and pushing the anti-vax sort of disinformation route. And this, to me, I think is interesting, because you can see how quick the different groups or different disinformation groups on social media can react to current events and immediate developments, because it hints at how well organized they are, and how quick the direction within their hierarchy can get twisted. And we must sort of acknowledge that due to social media and how information is transferred and obtained in the 21st century, we have to accept that we're not just only the consumer. We help to form the social reality, because we all interact. We share the content. We send it to our friends. We put our opinions right in the comment section, and we must acknowledge that the civil society and every single one of us is a part of the information warfare, and we must react or adapt our strategy to do the same. So what I mean by that is the disinformation strategy, or not disinformation scene, I'd rather say, is they're very clear. They know what they want to do and very organized. And I think the media strategy, or of the regular scene, not the disinformation scene, should accept this reality. And we have to realize that the social media public space, let's call it, is not going to be any different. So we need to take one, not just personal incentive, but also an combined maybe approach to how we react to disinformation. And if you look at disinformation in general, not just regarding the coronavirus, its upper hand over the regular consumer is that it is how would I say, it's tempting. It's tempting to fall into the belief. And also you can see on different analysis what kind of groups of people are more inclined to get targeted by disinformation. And the disinformation always comes from an obscure area, you know, some company owned in which is running through an insolvency and is very untransparent. And we have to realize that our upper hand is that we may be transparent. We can show where the information is coming from, that it's not a conspiracy twist. And me personally, I think this is a great way to counter disinformation, is authenticity, putting faces behind it, showing people under the, or actual signatures under the, not actual signatures but name, as in who wrote this, you know, that it's not some obscure web, you know, conspiracy.net or something, but an actual blogger and everything. And the media platforms should respect this and should push the authentic opinion as much as possible, because I still believe that the general population is more inclined to believe a person who's speaking to you than an obscure internet profile. Thank you.
Да. Дякую, пане Адам. Насправді...
Thank you so much, Adam, for such an interesting comment. It's interesting to take a look at the behavior of those people who are consumers of this disinformation. What exactly they respond to, what are the triggers, what are the hooks that trigger them to share this information, which contains some kind of not verified information. So we have with us Vitalii, Rybak, analyst and Internews Ukraine. They have carried out a research on this topic. It's difficult to us to follow and monitor social media because as of now they are like enemies of the scientific community, of the academia. What we can do, we can follow the opinions of just average users. So Vitalii, can you please tell us about your research? Do you think that it is necessary to explain who wrote a particular post? Is it the right way to go? It seems to me that it's very important to understand that in social media, as our colleagues have said, it's difficult to trust the information which is spread there. But I would like to go further and say that it's difficult to trust whether the information is fair, because when analyzing the content, different fake news and disinformation, who spreads and who consumes of this kind of news, I must say that in all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube, a part of the users are bots, and they can be used to spread some kind of narratives to make them relevant, and then real people share this news. Thanks to bots, you can even make a topic trending, make something viral, and people will think that it is viral indeed. This problem is very serious. We can see that among Ukrainian politicians, their audience is not always true. Most of them are bots. Last year, we had a research, Fake Fans, where we monitored popular pages of some politicians, such as Viktor Medvedchuk, in social media. Now his Twitter account has about 140,000 subscribers. It seems like a good number. However, in July 2020, he had 400,000 subscribers. So about 300,000 subscribers were just disappeared. It turned out that that time Twitter deleted several 100,000 accounts which were related to Russian bot farms, and there were a lot of pro-Kremlin pages that disappeared. For example, Russia Today lost about several 100,000 subscribers. The same happened with the account of the president of Russia, who lost about 10,000 subscribers. So if you take into account that, for example, what Viktor Medvedchuk spreads on his social media, it can be distributed further. So there are tools which help us monitor the number of real and fake accounts. We can see that. However, we cannot be fully sure that those are real people. For example, this year we have analyzed German-speaking social media which spread pro-Russian narratives about Ukraine, about the war in the east of Ukraine. And when we started analyzing the situation, there was a series of public groups and pages. One of them was called Civil Initiative for the Peace of Ukraine. In Ukraine, it was in German. However, it spread completely pro-Russian narratives that Ukrainians are Nazis who punish the population of Donbass. There were other accounts, some kind of fake, non-authentic accounts without avatars, without friends, which were recently created. So in social media, it's difficult to believe that a topic is true, honest, and really viral. Of course, in traditional media, it's much easier to follow this. That's where the threat of social media lies. We don't always know whether there are real people among our friends. It seems to me that in this area, such countries as Ukraine, which are located in such a critical condition because of the war, we have a lot of security threats, a lot of threats related to our life, to life of our inhabitants in the east of Ukraine. We can develop a series of research, a series of tools which can be used and used by other countries. I read a lot of international research from the Western countries. Those research which are published in the West, they reiterate what we already know here in Ukraine. That is why probably we will develop some kind of a decision which will be relevant to everyone. I do agree with you. Ukrainian researchers and Ukrainian media are a step in front in this hybrid war. The key problems that we have is how to convey our knowledge to the Ukrainian and population of the other countries.
Unfortunate level of vaccination in Ukraine shows that it's the critical level of the way the information is communicated to our citizens. Our previous speakers have suggested three key solutions, what to do, what social media should do with the problem of disinformation. The first short-term decision is to regulate. Second, long-term is to develop the media literacy. And third decision is probably, it's a component of media literacy. It's to simplify the fake news and to explain everything. Not to simplify, but to probably, expose it. And together with us we have Yaropolk Brynykh, a representative of the American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative in Ukraine. What do you think about regulation? Because internet has always been seen as an open space, and I remember several years ago there was an initiative to include the access to the internet in the constitution. There were even such ideas, but right now, in fact, we are in the situation when social media are not a free space. They are regulated by private corporate companies and by American legislation. So how should Ukrainian user be in this situation that cannot defend his rights in the court if they are violated by a big global network, or the social media that is very foggy and you don't know who's behind it? So what is your opinion? Thank you for your question. Yes, 10 years ago social media were a bit different. It was more for friends, but now it's a lot of useless information too. This year in June, the American Bar Association have held the first international conference that is on about internet bots, and part of this information was dedicated to the topic of disinformation, what to do it and what can be done in Ukraine. It was an interesting discussion, and the Facebook representative, she said it was very difficult for Facebook to fight disinformation. I'm sorry. Facebook cannot do it. They're trying, but they need help by the state. They need the regulator. To translate from the business language, it says that Facebook doesn't want to spend any money to fight disinformation. And the same opinion has been expressed by representatives of Finland, Georgia. And they say, what can we do? We can collect fake news together with the organizations. We can try to use AI, but it's even a bigger threat because, yes, we can see how AI is working now. Many questions, yes, of how it's going to work, because technologies develop very fast. Even the IT specialists, they cannot follow how fast it's developing. So what can you tell about me? And I'm a humanitarian. The only way out that we saw is, despite of course increasing awareness, which I applaud, but it can only help win only in effective format in the very far future. So I think state regulation, but it's not a very popular opinion because you want to see internet as a free space. But altogether, Ukraine, for example, other countries, when there is a threat to the civil threat or national threat, it's better to show it on the example of Ukraine, because we're at war and we have pandemic, and it's a direct threat to the civil security and the state security. And this security is getting out of Facebook and Telegram from social media. Don't know about Instagram though, and that's where it's coming to Ukraine, and there's something that must be done with it. This topic is not very popular among Ukraine as the state and experts, but it's popular among experts, but not among politicians. So it's being criticized, and they say that the state wants to introduce censorship. But here it's important to understand that regulation and certain restrictions and obliging the business of big corporates influencing lives of everyone, but not just a small part of inhabitants, they have an impact on life on every person in the country. And here it is important to understand that the country has the right to interfere with their activity. And according to the Convention on Human Rights, in case of a threat to the public security or state security, the state has the right to restrict. Yes, freedom of speech is not an absolute category, clear. But I have a question. Social media do not have legal entities in Ukraine. If we adopt the law in Ukraine, how can we make them fulfill it? You have to do it via dialogue, and you have to explain it to them, because we don't mention Telegram, because the Telegram, it's a very commercial story, a fake story. We have investigated. It's just something that is done by PR companies who are selling Telegram channels to their channels and say, look how many the audience is very big, but it's bought, and it's very easy to check it. Yes, it is the fact. The same happens in Facebook, even though Facebook is regulating and is trying to control the situation, not to let it happen like this. But Ukraine, on the one hand, doesn't have a big impact on what is happening in the American company, but on the other hand, these companies are working in Ukraine, providing their services in Ukraine, and they can pay taxes in Ukraine. So here it is necessary to have a wide dialogue among specialists of different directions, both lawyers and politicians, journalists, to have an agreement to find the way out, because the situation seems to be like deadly, and not so much is said about it. We are happy to support such initiatives, such discussions, our program to facilitate internet freedom in Ukraine. But yeah, it's funny that I say it because I'm also saying that we have to limit the freedom on the internet. But we are to support such discussions both in Ukraine and also involving international experts. I don't have a ready script or scenario. I'm not as arrogant as to say what to do. What needs to be done is to hold effective discussions. We are ready to support these discussions. So we're inviting you, colleagues, and people who are watching us, perhaps. We are inviting to have such discussions because we are to decide what to do. Because we have to understand where it's a fake information, how many people can understand it. You probably have to work with the fake news. Even myself, I cannot say that I can always tell where it's the fake news and where not. It's somebody who has to do with informational technologies. You have to create the way out and to convince the state that this regulation is necessary, because despite war, despite COVID, we have only 18% of vaccinated. Oh, it's almost, no, it's 23% of vaccinated. So Ukraine still is not fighting disinformation. It's unbelievable. And it's weird because public organizations are, screaming about it. They're fighting it, but the state, in fact, is ignoring the fighting disinformation. So we will watch a talk show in the evening and we will see what they look like on the channels owned by oligarchs, and that's when we can understand the answer to this question, because politicians benefit from it. Populism. And the previous colleague mentioned that disinformation has also been like a weapon, a tool. And in our situation, when we are at war and it's ongoing and people dying now also of coronavirus, and to keep on using it, it's ridiculous and also disgusting. We have to sit and decide what to do with it, but not to wind up their political interests. It's an important, of course, viewpoint, but it has to be put into heads of those who are decision makers. Okay. I think until the, as they say, until the rooster kicks you, you won't start doing anything. Well, I think that at the moment some regional division of big corporates, including Facebook, at least for some regional clusters. And we have Roman Kulchynsky, and he is the editor-in-chief of Texty. And they do many studies of social media. And do you think that on the one hand social media is innovations, but on the other hand they put us into some archaic times when we respond to emotional irritants and we turn off our logics quite often? And in fact, social media, which should have been the innovative tools, they vice versa transform or turn the citizen into some kind of society that lags behind, but that is only emotionally responding to things. And maybe the media literacy campaign could be effective here. And it's a philosophical question. You can say this about any invention, about atomic bomb and so on. Now Tzu or some philosopher said that science brings use, but if bad people use it, it's going to make it worse. But we have bad people prevail. So, but this achievement differs a lot from all the previous ones. For example, when the books were invented, they added to progress. So, but people said, wow, now everybody will read. Well, indeed. For some people who are rational, they can use social media for self-organization, for participating in interesting discussions, for new ideas to be born. That's what I do. I can just post something and people comment on it. I can have a new idea for the new article. That's on the one hand. So people use it in different ways, but in its bigger mass, it decreases the level of society to the some tribes level. When they see some threat, they don't even know what is happening and they are just running away from it without even speculating on it. There is a threat like this. People just stop thinking rationally. They respond to emotional triggers. So they choose some emotional trigger. They know that some people, let's speak about vaccine. They know that it's a painful matter for some people. So they study them, they develop messages, and throw many messages at this targeted audience, very emotional messages, more emotional than other people would say it. And they just throw them at people, and then people get very agitated, and there's a wave. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they fail, but it's always possible to do it, especially when there's a hot topic. So it's cheap, it's fun. It's the principle of disinformation in social media, because they can disseminate information very fast. There are no preventive mechanisms. It's like 10 years ago, the editor would read the article and say, what a fool has written this down, we're not going to publish it. But what about social media? Well, Ukraine can't do nothing about it. Well, even if we can do something, well, it's not much. We can ban some Russian media. We can of course ban. We have banned the Russian social media. But what should we do with Facebook or, for example, TikTok? It's clear evil. Wall Street Journal, they have analyzed TikTok, and they say that it's in TikTok they show the child pornography and they give the ad of the drugs. What can Ukraine do? They can increase the informational wave. And in India, for example, there were cases when via Facebook people were killed. We didn't have it, but it's because of these algorithms which lead to this and that. We have the American allies. They tell us that Facebook is bugging everyone now, and there are many scandals connected with Facebook, and they are very harmful to the strategic partner of Ukraine. Let's decide something and regulate something. How can we regulate it? Their algorithms are not transparent. We don't know how they worked. Part of the internet activists say if the public campaign is so influential, it should be based on the algorithm that is in open access, so that anybody could go and check and say what's wrong and what's right about it. It's a really cool topic. Then we would know the principle according to which they work. Another thing about their algorithm, all their artificial, all the AI. How does AI function? For it to function properly, it needs a big mass of data for trainings, and they are in English. I don't think they collected the data in Ukrainian and Russian.
Because their audience is mostly English speaking. So these mechanisms are better trained in English. This is a question of money. If they do not invest money into disinformation spread in Ukraine, they won't have results. So they do not want to invest a lot of money. That is why in Ukraine we have to raise awareness. In the US, we need to reach out to allies in order to influence Facebook. However, while we are fighting with Facebook, TikTok will rise strong. After TikTok, there will be someone else. So in TikTok, I carried out research using the hashtag vaccination, and not a single video which I saw was, how to say, normal. Everything was about conspiracy theories. I felt bad, I lost consciousness, and so on and so forth. So if we can control something on Facebook, then TikTok is something different. There is a case with attack from China. their ministry, the ex-hacker, one of the top hackers in the world, and they streamlined the system of early warning of fakes in social media. It works. So when they see there is a fake information spread, they use this tool. When they see that there is one fake distributed, the principle is that within the 3 years after the government needs to release a press release to, for example, say people that this news was fake. And then the media and average citizens, they react. If this information is refuted, if nothing happens within the first 3 years, then this information will be spread. In Ukraine, for example, if we catch a fake which was spread by the Russian propaganda machine, they inform the law enforcement agencies. However, our authorities thought for 72 hours. Can you imagine what happens in these 72 hours? This response wasn't efficient. Unfortunately, our state doesn't work properly in this area. We need their activities to be coordinated. However, there's a huge problem with it in Ukraine. Once I was at some kind of a meeting dedicated to anti-propaganda, and it was complete chaos. They only made noise, they justified their actions, and so on and so forth. In order to fight the propaganda, we need to have a strong state, we need to cooperate with our international partners, and last but not least, we need money. I agree with you. Communication, interagency communication, cooperation with civil society organizations and international partners is of utmost importance. As for the information campaigns, this is exactly what we can do. This is what can work. Our research shows that it helps. This information campaign, they need also to be distributed in traditional professional media, which are still valid, which still have a high reputation. Because now, I don't know, according to the current research, most people get the information from social media. As for Facebook, as an example of this, Facebook enters the territory of the traditional media. In September this year, they have announced a second experiment when they are working with 25 regional local editors to prepare so-called bulletin of events. This is kind of a service provided by Facebook, or kind of a new project of regional news. Before that, in the US, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, Facebook announced the list of American media which they included into their news feed. So these were the media that they will support and show in their newsfeed. As for the other countries, not only Ukraine, then the situation is quite sad. I follow Facebook pages of different media, civil society organizations, but I don't see their posts in my newsfeed. Instead, I see advertising of TSN TV channel, which I don't want to see. I'm not their target audience. The traditional media become invisible. Their role is just diminished by the social media, which appeals to people's emotions, to some kind of hype or trash. So how traditional media feel in this area? Have you noticed that Facebook is trying to enter your territory? I see a lot of tactical decisions. I see that the media tries also to jump on this wagon of hype. They ask the journalist to change the headlines. But what is your strategic approach to this? Yevhenia Motorevska, who is chief editor of Hromadske TV channel. Thank you, Oksana. Well, first, You said that traditional media are competitors with social media. So I felt that in 2019, when Zelensky won the presidential elections, I worked at an agency of journalist investigations, and back then there was a boom of anonymous Telegram channels. I think all of you remember this Dark Knight, Legitimate, Zealandia, and many others. Part of those channels were blocked by the decision of a court on the request of the Security Service of Ukraine, as such, which were moderated in the Russian Federation. However, part of those channels work. Back then, it was kind of frustration because journalists could dig up a topic related to abuse or corruption and fail because of this Telegram channel. There was a vertical of power of Volodymyr Zelensky. All of those Telegram channels contained a huge number of so-called exclusive information. These were different information which is harmful. It was very difficult to compete because you can dig up someone that Mr. Komarnitsky, who was called Great Cardinal of the development market in Ukraine. However, at one moment there were a lot of photos when he came to the presidential office, and you feel completely frustrated because that's what Oksana has said. People want these confidential hot information because thanks to these Telegram channels they kind of get access to confidential information. This is they said this is what you won't see over the on the TV. It creates an effect of getting access to something classified, to something elite, because if you join this community, you will get exclusive information. These Telegram channels have a huge number of subscribers. Maybe part of them are bots. However, the TV channels of Hromadske, which is quite strong, in social media, we have about 30,000 subscribers. As for Zealandia and many others unofficial channels, they have more than 100 subscribers. It's very important for our media not to play with those anonymous channels, because if an information appears in these TV channels, you as a journalist, you want to refer to these channels because you see the documents, you see the videos, and our task as journalists is try to resist this temptation, because there was a trend recently when big Ukrainian media referred to these anonymous channels. Yes, that happened 2 years ago, when even now I see that traditional media, or they refer to, for example, telegrams of minister of someone like that. So we shall not support that. We as journalists, we give our audience a sign that they also might trust these Telegram channels. We at Hromadske had some kind of a minor conflict when there was a fire put to the Gothic Cathedral in Ukraine. Everyone wrote in the Telegram channels about it, and my colleague said, let's write something faster, let's not spend any minutes. And the head of our news feed said, no, until we have official confirmation from the State Emergency Service, or until our photographer has visited the place, we won't have links to those channels. And it was quite difficult because, of course, we know that we lost part of our audience who visited those channels to get fresh information. However, we couldn't do otherwise. I know that there is a huge amount of disinformation which is related to vaccination, and it seems to me that under these conditions this situation will be analyzed in a year or two time, because we lose a lot of people, and we will be able to take a look at this. In your opinion, does the media community understand those threats which are posed by these media? We as journalists and editors understand that social media have already stolen our advertisers. 90% of advertising are spread in Google or social media or in Facebook, and we just continue going like nothing happened. In Ukraine, we have a huge market of media. It's 5 times bigger than in Poland, for example. But it seems to me that this is kind of a sore bubble, and it will end sometime in the future. So can we think of any strategic decisions? It also seems to me that this is some kind of a bubble. When we are going through this period of post-truth, the society will have a demand, will have a need for information, for verified information. This is like when you eat in McDonald's, when you eat fast food every day, then sooner or later you will want to eat healthy food. That is why I think that there will be this demand for high quality media. What we can do now, it seems to me that this is our task to develop media literacy. Text.org.ua have done a lot in this area. They analyzed activities of those Telegram channels. They showed about their codependence, about who administrates them. And second, it seems to me that Ukrainian media need to better work with social media to develop TikTok, of course, meeting their standards, their internal standards, to continue developing Facebook, in Telegram. It seems to me that for a long period of time, Ukrainian media disregarded social media. They just copy-pasted what they posted on their official websites. They didn't adapt the format. However, social media are completely different, and traditional media need to work with the content to adapt it for the audience of social media. It needs to be fast, but it also needs to be high quality and verified. So the media needs to become like a salad, healthy food, which will help us fight junk food of the social media. However, now as a media expert, I see this distinction between those media that are high quality and those media who just copy and paste this model, so-called hypo aggregation model. It seems to me that it's more successful. Social media, they will just eat these medias up. I think that the media need to talk to the business circles. It's difficult for us to talk to the politicians. They are populist. However, businesses must be interested in safety and security, in development. So probably business can finally prove that they are socially responsible. It seems to me that what happens in Ukraine, that we have this low trust in media as in the US or in some European countries. And business is also quite conscious of the media, because they think that today you support this media because today everyone trusts it, and tomorrow there will be a scandal and everyone will destroy this media. So this business is afraid to bear the responsibility for the mistakes of the social media. When we had a situation like that with MP Trukhin, when information about his car accident was removed from the media, and of course it contributes to distrust in the media. This is a vicious circle that it's difficult to break. Of course, we have questions. I just wanted to add that we try to negotiate with the business, but we need more time, because business looks at us for quite a long time before they want to support you. If it's a fair and just business, of course, we need to spend some time to work with them. We want them to trust us.
Віддав
We have started receiving questions from our audience. I just want to have a brief comment. Since the politicians have a very weak, reaction to fight with disinformation, and for the past years we didn't see the promised reform or the law on media. No steps were taken on the legislative base on fighting disinformation and so on. So we can have a bit other challenges. Next year, the parliamentary campaign is going to be launched, but in Komorovsky Instagram has bigger audience than Zelensky does. The audience is asking us, first question, it's September. European Court on Human Rights, the owner of Facebook the owner of the page in the Facebook is responsible for inappropriate comments. So what risks can such practice bear, and can it partly solve the problem with the fake dissemination? Who is willing to reply? May I? I know about this case. I have shared it on my Facebook, but it's not that popular. My Facebook account is not that popular, but nevertheless, it's the political activist account. He shared hate speech, not just fake information. That's why he was seen as responsible, because he's the public activist. And that is, I'm 99% sure that these fakes, if it's bots or just users adding comments near his posts, they shared hate speech and he didn't delete it. I'm sure we will see this during our elections, because they will try to block it using the court's decisions, the political opponents. And going back to my previous message, we have to start regulating it, because even those who make the authorities today, they will get, because of their inactivity, they will have problems themselves, because we are fighting with this fake information only in the mode of some panic attack by blocking it immediately. But where is the state strategy? Or because they started connecting VK via VPN, and what? How does state fights with this? It's not the approach. And what I wrote on my Facebook account, this European Court of Human Rights case is going to show that you have to deal with this effectively. It's not the approach that should be in the democratic state, but Ukraine still doesn't pick up on it. But maybe, very soon, those who are using these tools now, they will actually see that it doesn't work. Or maybe we didn't hit the bottom yet, the rock bottom. Another question. If we speak about such decisions, being responsible for the comments on your page, who is to issue such decisions? And if it's about Belarus or Russia, where can these activists be punished? Not for, trying to cause some aggression, but to be heard. So I would like to hear the opinions of the experts given these realities and this level of trust to the system. Roman, maybe you would like to comment on it. So the question is, can we trust now the system of regulating information space? What should it be like? Since in Ukraine we have democracy and we can have Maidan, but there is also a threat of such, not very decent management of system using resources. So there's a question, for the transparency of the system, to the decision-making procedure, and if it's going to be the regulation of the information component, won't it lead, or will it lead, when after some survey, they will say that it's not like it should be. Whatever you write in social media, the Ukrainian state cannot block it. They have no tools. But there were such cases that someone was even imprisoned because he was writing something about Zelensky. We had such cases, and it's very dangerous. I think the media and the public community, they should, of course, fight for not, if the law enforcement agencies are too critical on this account, they have to, of course, stand their ground. But also, how can you prove that this is my account? If I write something or post something in social media, and then I say in the court, it wasn't me, try and prove that it was me. It seems to me another problem about the law on the media, a big part of of the citizens. They thought that, for example, they would create some network of journalists and others will be left with no rights, even though the Western donors wanted to support this law and lots of NGOs didn't want it because they didn't trust, and Zelensky then came on the wave on disinformation. And the manager of the Pinchuk channel, he had an image that those were not the channels who were fighting for the freedom of speech to implement this draft law. That's why they didn't adopt it. And when today we see that every other authority that comes in power, they want to have their block of power. I think that those who are spreading disinformation, they can even open the website in another country, in Malaysia or Indonesia. So they will always win. But such small media as Text or Hromadske, they will be forgotten. So here the question is, if we have a stable democracy, we can do it. But if our democracy is dependent upon Maidans, then I don't know. I can't tell you not to do it, but I don't know how to do it. So we are the victims of short-term decisions. We have no way out. It's our culture like this, that we are used to some small minor steps, or and maybe this culture is imposing its trace on how we are fighting disinformation. We are just doing it here and there, but at the same time it's difficult for us. It's difficult to overcome us because we're like this network or net. Yes, I wanted to comment on it as a human rights defender. When there was a comment that the state would take more powers, as I'm bothered by this. Even though I say that regulation is necessary, I do not like regulation because the state is trying, as we can see now with the draft law on the security service of Ukraine, which is not so bad, but at the same time, not so. We will see all of its advantages when it's voted for. As for regulation in this sector, here it's very important, just like in the draft law on the security service, to make this regulation, with some preventive mechanism. And in this, if the state controls the information sector, there must be some safeguard or protectors like the court. There must be some control. You are mentioning a very interesting thing. So the key to regulation can be the reform of justice, this basic law enforcement reform that could increase transparency and trust to the system, right? And then we could speak more. Yes, but that's for 10 or 15 years. Yes. It would be great if it is reformed, but so far they can't. But we still have to work with it now, and we cannot postpone it. We need to decide now, and then we'll see. One more question we have. Recently, there were publications saying that Facebook is spreading fake more actively about vaccination rather than truth. And there was a scandal when the American media have conducted the internal investigation, and these internal algorithms are boosting the popular information among users, and it's not always true information, or it's seldom true information. Also have read the research that in some group, the information can be brought on the surface about some critical topics. So what do you do with these things when they try to influence the behavior of people? We are becoming more aggressive in real life as well. How do we follow or trace these patterns? What can we do about that? Maybe Vitalii can tell us. This fall, a nice book about Facebook has been published from two New York Times journalists, An Ugly Truth, and she's tracing Facebook from its establishment up till today. And we can say that the general topic of the book is that the history of the Facebook is the history of mistakes, and some irresponsibility. So 10 years ago, when Facebook was even starting it, they were openly testing it inside how people would interact. So if they go and see news and messages of negative nature or positive nature, and it turned out that people are more actively perceiving the negative information. And moreover, they have installed inside that things that are read by people is going to influence the tone of their own posts on that day. But from the point of view of the business, this negative content is more profitable, because it evokes people to spread what they read and maybe even join the conversation somehow. When the person sees that everything is fun, they are happy, but they should like it, like positive posts, ruin the algorithm of Facebook. And another algorithm of this Facebook is the when they see that everybody agrees with them, they feel nice to be part of it. So it's also the problem of the bubble that they create. And if we take a look at Poroshenko, who thought that everybody is supporting him, and then the voters don't vote for him, he was really shocked. I want to remind you about Komarovsky also. Another thing to add to the conversation we had on the moderation. On moderation, it doesn't matter what algorithms are or AI are. The final decisions are made by people, and people can make mistakes. And in Facebook, in this book, Ugly Truth, it shows that on early stages in 2015, they have detected Russian interference, which is going to become of mass nature, American elections. But the analytical report prepared by the team just got lost. It didn't reach the decision makers. And then it turned out, when the Russian information campaign beat Facebook, it turned out the management was not even aware of this problem. They found out about it post factum. So what is it? It's just the negligence, human negligence, but the cost of it is and can be very high. I think that the money for during elections probably blinded them. We speak a lot about Facebook today, but I would like to remind you that we have also YouTube, which is even more, which is even less transparent. And we have one more question. In brief, Facebook is going to cooperate with a good quality media outlet, but how Facebook evaluates quality, and it's another question. And it's going to even pay for such content. How can you assess this kind of cooperation, or is it the is it also their attempt, to bleach their reputation? I think it's more connected with the hearings in the Senate and this public scandal with Facebook as of 2018, and there is no end to it. Obviously, it's going to continue, and Facebook understands that they either to critically change the algorithms and lose money, or look for some partnerships. But in fact, I see no reason for Facebook to buy content from other media if they can just hire some local editors and produce the same news, the same product with their own efforts, and not spend any money. So this looks like playing with the audience to me. But what if? Yes, what if the big social media become the source of income for local media? That's an unexpected question. We have very little time left, so I would like to ask our participants to use 30 seconds to sum up for our audience, maybe some practical recommendations of how we can, oppose to disinformation and propaganda.
Okay, I will briefly ask my colleagues to join our meetings where we can discuss these issues all together. we will discuss topics of disinformation, what to do with that, and how to find a compromise, because I'm not the person who will persuade someone how to do that. However, we'll organize these meetings quite often. That is why I would like to invite all of you, journalists, business, politicians, lawyers. Please join our meetings, because of course it's better to be united. United we stand, disunited will fall. So first, remove social media apps from your phone. If you see messages on Facebook, for example, you can use it on desktop. Do not use social media to read news. Read high-quality media. Hromadske Liga, Новое время, тексты, Суспільне. These are my recommendation. Just don't read those crap medias. Read good medias. Spend your time to read good books, to work in the nature. You will feel better and you will have a better life. I fully agree with my colleagues that we need to consume so-called slow media, because they have enough analysis, and it almost never happens in social media, because it's not the format. And think why social media wants us to consume fast news. And I would also like to invite you to anti-bot trainings by Internews Ukraine, where we tell what to do not to be hooked by manipulations. My first advice would to start from yourself. I know when you read some kind of news, you wanted to share it, you want to send it to your colleagues, but first I would like to tell you that you need to verify it. Second, do not play with unverified sources of information. Do not share anonymous Telegram channels. Support independent media. It is important for our society. In Ukraine, there's enough independent media. They need your support. They need financial support and they need your attention. Thank you so much, dear participant. Thank you so much, dear audience. And I would like to give you a little piece of advice to end with. This is a question of self-development, using social media and using high-quality sources of information. Learn, grow, try to read high-quality media, try to support high-quality media. And by the way, the Institute of Mass Information creates so-called white list of social media, and you can support them. I'm really grateful to all of you. I'm grateful to our guests who were with us via Zoom. It was interesting to hear the opinion of European experts, and we saw that it actually similar to ours. So I hope that we will join our forces and that the academia will also finally reach spreading of truthful information and to help fight disinformation. Thank you.